Hello, I'm Tony, and I'm a hard-bitten detective in Chicken Police, Paint It Red. Available free from Prime Gaming until the end of January 2023. I'm also a chicken. Well, sort of. This is a film noir detective game set in a world where everyone has an animal head but human-like body. It takes a bit of getting used to, the look of the characters in this game. The game overall though looks perfect, especially when you've got the film grain setting enabled. It really captures the look of the old black and white film noir flicks so well, and the voiceover acting is absolutely spot on. There's some really cool era appropriate jazz playing throughout, which further sets the mood. It feels like developers definitely watched Sin City, even down to occasional flashes of colour to accentuate certain objects. As with all of these detective type games, I don't want to spoil the story, as the unfolding twists and turns are a major part of the game. In fact, maybe the main part of the game, because mechanically it's a little bit on the light side. The majority of your time is spent looking around a scene and then talking to people. Mousing around the scene highlights any interactable objects, and clicking on them invariably brings up at least one voice line, if not a short conversation between the two main protagonists, Sunny and Marty, who are the Chicken Police from the title. Once you've checked everywhere in a scene, clicked on all the things you can click on and do whatever you can with them, you need to talk to whoever is there, and you generally have to do it multiple times. I don't mean leave the scene, get some more information and come back and talk to them again. I mean talk through all the options available and then instantly start talking to them again. That's the only way to get all the information you need. I wasn't a big fan of this, particularly for reasons I'll get to later that put me at odds with most of the reviews I saw. It is what it is. Once you know that you have to do that, it just becomes routine. You keep clicking until you get the same conversation again. Once you've had your conversation, you might get to ask someone about a list of topics. And the more looking around you've done, what detectives call investigating, I believe, the more topics you can ask about. This is all very point and click mechanics, and not especially interactive and detective-y, since there are typically very few objects in a scene that actually matter, which is another gripe of mine. But gripe time's later. Wait for your gripes. With some characters you meet, you can question them. Another last option where you get to actually interact with the game in a more meaningful way. You're presented with a bar that represents how cooperative someone is, with a list of questions that you can ask. You also have a brief description about the person, giving you clues on how to approach the interrogation. I mean, friendly questioning. Actually, no, I don't mean friendly questioning. Nothing in this hard-bitten, cynical, all going to hell world is friendly. Choose the questions that match your insights and the meter goes up, getting you closer to the information you need. Get the wrong questions and get the meter too low, and the interview is over. The correct choices generally stand out with a bit of thought and attention paid to it, though I must have missed something for a couple that just didn't make any sense to me. But overall it's a good bit of gameplay, which is a little bit undermined by the fact that you can instantly retry it if you fail, or if you wanted to improve the score you received, since you're graded on the number of questions you asked that were focused on the traits you discovered. It's a lot less impactful gameplay wise if you can just redo it all again instantly. I'm not really sure what the purpose of a score is. If you care about the score, I'd be amazed if you didn't retry the question until you get the score you want. If you don't care, you don't care. At least you do get a bit more detail and backstory. Another gameplay element that I think I saw maybe 4 times is the detecting part, where you match suspects, clues and evidence together to form the narrative of a story. Again, this is entirely consequence free and didn't make as much sense to me. First time I did it, I literally just dragged everything in every box until it all worked out. Once you do have 2 items placed, You can pin a line between them, and then you get to choose between 4 or 5 connections. This always made sense, but again, if you get it wrong, don't matter, just do it again and choose another option till you get it right. There's no score here as far as I could tell, so sometimes it might be quicker to just randomly drag than try and think about it. Lastly, for gameplay, there are a few action sequences. You have to undo a rope by tracing it, or there's a shootout with a car that is a little bit of a gamer ability check. Like, I play a reasonable amount of action oriented games, and some of the timings in these little action sequences were a bit tight. Someone that has trouble with their reflexes or just doesn't like that kind of action gameplay is probably going to be stopped at these points. I understand why they were added, you've got to have action sequences, but an option to skip rather than just retry would have been a good idea, I think. I will mention the world building. It's really good. All the information you gather about all the people, all the places, and all the events that happened in this world are collected within your notebook. And you can go back and peruse it afterwards, and it provides a pretty comprehensive view of the world. I knew the political situation, I knew the social situation, I knew the characters, and I knew how they all interacted with each other. It's a really brilliant bit of world building. I say that because it's now gripe time. When I've had gripes about games before, the like-dislike ratio gets bad, but that's what I'm here for. If I've got a gripe, I'll say it. Gripe number 1 is definitely a subjective thing. It's the humour. I didn't find this game funny at all. And it is meant to be. It is definitely trying to be. But for me, saying chicken bumps instead of goosebumps wasn't particularly funny to me the first time. And by the 5th time, it was actually a bit irritating. If that's funny to you, then there's a lot more humour like that in this game. And you might well enjoy it. It just isn't for me. This is also made a bit worse by the amount of objects that just trigger banter between the 2 main characters, which is supposed to be funny but wasn't for me, but which doesn't add anything to the world building or the narrative of the game. Because I didn't enjoy the comedy, it felt like a complete waste of time to me, and there's so many banter conversations between pretty much every character that I just don't think was written very well. It all made the game a little bit of a slog to get through for me, which is a shame, because the story itself is pretty good. There's twists and turns that would have engaged me if the dialogue was written better. I did see the final twist coming a little way out, but it was only a little way out. You don't get the information you need until quite late in the game, so it was good. For me, something about the dialogue was just a little bit off. I definitely don't want to hear about how the whole town is going to hell anymore for at least a month. I know it's a very film noir thing to say, but there was about 10 films worth of that in this 4-hour game, and it got a bit tiring. Another thing I felt was strange about the writing was how much it talked about racism. The main characters were often telling other characters not to be racist, and yet still did exactly the same thing to someone else in the next scene. It was weird. Would have been fine if they hadn't made such a big point of it. Also mixed in with the whole film noir image is where all women are called dames, and they're either dangerous or need to be protected. So it's this odd mix of progressive message about not being racist, undermined by being racist and by the sort of outdated stereotypes that come from films that originally were from the 50s. Made worse, for me, because I didn't find the things funny. Like calling a horse-headed barman Bojack. Hey, that's the name of a show. It sure is, sir. That's just a reference. It's not really a joke. Anyway, bright moaning over. That's what I didn't enjoy about the game. Overall, it's stylish, dark, overly moody sometimes, but very atmospheric detective em up. With a good story, okay gameplay, but for me, poor dialogue voiced perfectly, and not very funny. I can't really recommend it personally. But there were a bunch of reviewers out there that gave it like a 4 or 4.5 out of 5. So it could just be a personal taste thing. It just didn't work for me. I've explained why it didn't work for me, so hopefully you can gauge from this review if it might work for you. If you think it might, give it a go, because as with all of these reviews, it's currently free. I am done with this review and totally done with this game though, so I'm off. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.